Namaste, guys. Christian Long, Life Enhancement Consultant, giving you a big and beautiful shout out on this Transformation Q&A Thursday on Monday, because we're catching up from previous weeks. Before we begin, let us invoke. Place your hands on your heart. Beware the heart. Beware the love in the heart, the softness, the tenderness, the sweetness within the heart. Feel the heart expanding. And beware the crown. Feel the crown expanding. Beware the center of the heart and center of the crown simultaneously. To the Supreme God, Divine Father, Divine Mother, to Grandmaster Chola Koksui, Lord Mahaguru Jmeling, to Lord Buddha Kuan Yin, to Lord Ganesh, to Holy Master Count Saint Germain, to all the Holy Gurus, Holy Masters, Saints, Archangels, Holy Angels, Healing Ministers, to the Angels of Wisdom, to our Divine Selves, our higher souls, we humbly invoke for your divine light, divine love, divine power, for your help, guidance, and protection. We ask for clarity. We ask for understanding. We ask for inner transformation on all levels. We thank you, Lord God. We thank you all. With gratitude, respect, and love, so be it, so be it, and so it is. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So be it. Welcome, everyone. Happy Monday to you. Hopefully, you guys had a good weekend on a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Here in Honolulu, Hawaii, the temperature is about the exact same year round. It's anywhere from 70 degrees Fahrenheit to about 85 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm looking out the window right now at my Airbnb and see the downtown Honolulu, a couple clouds in the sky, bright blue sky, and it's really, really pretty. It's a great place to rejuvenate, great place to heal. Funny enough, one of the masters, Master Marilag, actually two of the masters, Master Marilag and Master Glenn Mendoza, are actually celebrating Master Marilag's birthday, and she's zero point 0.4 miles or a 5-minute walk away from actually where I'm staying. So I think the last time she's been in Hawaii has been probably a decade, and she was the toss up between celebrating in Singapore or celebrating in Honolulu, and she chose Honolulu. And she's literally right down the street. But because my body hasn't been feeling too well the past couple weeks, I just said hi distantly and said, maybe we can get together before you leave on the 6th, which is in the next couple days. So we'll see if that happens or not. But I'm feeling good enough to do the meditations and good enough to do the Q&As. I realize how much energy these things actually require, and it's given me a greater appreciation for the ninja power that I've had most of my life, is the ability to communicate, to express, to articulate, to be creative. And when my body got sick due to COVID a couple weeks ago, it gave me a new appreciation for that ability, because it was very, very difficult for me to have the necessary energy to do the classes. So I was surprised by that, and I think a part of it is because it affects the lungs a lot. And even though I was resting a lot, getting a lot of healing, it still was kind of like trudging through mud or slush to actually get up the energy to clearly, lovingly articulate the points of Grandmaster Chola Koksui, Pranic Healing, or Hatha Yoga. So I want to appreciate you guys for sending the questions. We've had them prepped up for a little over a week now, and have them in front of me. So let's get right into it. So first question is, you referred to reaping what you sow. So I'm confused. Why tithing to a spiritual organization versus to an organization that deals with material help of the kind that one seeks or needs, if one seeks and needs more material prosperity and grounding? If the spiritual aspect is already overdeveloped over the ability to materialize and deal with the physical body and material needs, shouldn't tithing be directed to organizations that are more grounded and focused in helping with the material aspects of life? So it's a good question. simply put, if you're looking to be materially and financially prosperous, wouldn't you tie to organizations that deal with the physical plane, not organizations that deal with the spiritual plane? So I actually had this come up with my mentor a couple weeks ago and relating it to scholarships, right? Relating it to scholarships. So within Pranic Healing, there's over 20 different classes that people can take to improve their health, their emotional health, their physical health, their relationships, their finances, their spiritual growth and development, all using energy healing, energy principles. Um, and my assumption for many, many years has been, well, if you tithe a class to somebody, the karma is not going to come back quickly, or it's not going to come back in the form that you want it to come back in the form of, right? So if you need material, financial prosperity, abundance, and success, then it's not a good investment of your money or a good investment of your time to give to a spiritual class. And it's going to take many, many years for that good karma to come back. That's not necessarily accurate. Now, I can't go into the finer details of tithing because that's taught in the class by Grandmaster Chogo Sui called Kriya Shakti, how to use spiritual techniques and energy to materialize mental goals, mental targets, emotional goals and targets, physical goals and targets, relationship goals and targets. Um, but what is just as important of where you tithe is the decreeing of where you want that energy to go, which is taught in greater detail in that class. So you might have a material need, right? You want a promotion, you want more income, you want a nicer car, a nicer house, you want to do something on the physical plane, you want to travel more, right? You can give to a spiritual organization of your choice and then decree that the energy from that tithe go to the specific materialization of that physical thing, the nicer car, the nicer house, the job promotion, etc. So tithing is an art and a science that actually, obviously, Master Cho was a master at. And some of the things that he would have students, including his own organization, tithe to, on the outside, you go, well, that doesn't make sense why I would be tithing to that. But then as he would go underneath the energy of something, he would say, that's why we're tithing to this organization for this purpose. It's a little bit beyond the scope of today's talk for the Q&A. But it was actually really interesting where Master Cho would tie to certain causes and then decree the energy to go back to other things that he wanted to materialize within pranic healing or hatha yoga and moving the divine plan forward for the organization. So, in a nutshell, let's not make it complicated. Tithing is you give 10% of your net income after taxes to a spiritual organization of your choosing to generate uh, material prosperity, material good karma, and good karma in general, right? And then you decree to accelerate that. You decree something to accelerate the good karma coming back to you, and you can decree it to go to a specific thing. And again, the practice of decreeing is taught in Kriya Shakti. I'm not authorized to share that in the Q&A, but for people who have taken the Kriya Shakti class, it's a reminder that if you want something to come back to you faster and you want it to be directed at a specific thing, then you decree it. Then you decree it. So you can give to feeding programs. Simply put, the karma will come back to you faster if the karma is consumed faster. So if you give to a feeding program and that money is used to buy a burger, somebody eats that burger, the karma is consumed immediately. But the compound effect is not as strong as if you give to a scholarship for somebody to improve their job performance or improve their career. So it will take longer for that karma to materialize within that person's life, but the karma that's coming back to them and coming back to you will be much, much greater. It's like the difference of planting wheat, right? Or versus planting seeds for an apple tree. right? It'll take much, much longer for the seeds of an apple tree to come back to you, but the benefit is you'll have apples that give to you year after year after year after year, but it's going to take a while for that apple tree to turn into a tree and produce apples versus you plant corn or wheat and it comes up a few weeks later, right? Does that make sense? So again, reaping and sowing. You plant corn, you get corn. You plant tomatoes, you get tomatoes. So you ask yourself the question, what is it that I want to materialize in my mental life, my emotional life, my relationship life, my physical life, physical health, physical well being, or my financial life? And then you simply plant the seed for that. You decree the seed to be energized and come back to you in the form of that karma. Make sense? Okay, so we don't have to make it super complicated. Yes, again, it is a science as well as an art form. We can't really discuss too much about the art form in this Q&A. So next question. Pranic Healing classes have provided me with practice and confidence. Good. Yet no more knowledge than was presented by GMCKS in his own books. I'm going through GMCKS Sutra books and their commentaries by Master Ko, which are helping me tremendously. I understand character building and the practice of the virtues represent both the foundations as well as the playground where most spiritual work and battles and purifications need to be carried before being able to get to higher levels. If one realizes there is still a ton of work to do on character building, which there is, does it make sense to start with Arhatic prep, or would it be better to work on character building before starting Arhatic prep? Excellent question. There's several parts in here. So he's referring to the Golden Lotus Sutra books, the Golden Lotus Sutra books, which is a series of, I believe it's 7 or 8 books. I forget what it is, 7 or 8 books that contain sutras or holistic information to evolve, to become a better person. And the Golden Lotus Sutra book that specifically works with the virtues is called Compassion and Objectivity. Within Pranic Healing and Hatha Yoga, we work with the 5 major virtues: loving kindness and non-injury, constancy of aim and effort and non-laziness, accurate perception, correct expression with honesty and non-lying as the sub-virtue, moderation and non-excessiveness, and generosity and non-stealing. So those are the 5 major virtues that we work on within Pranic Healing and Hatha Yoga, which set the foundation or should set the foundation for your physical life, your personal life, your professional life, and your spiritual life. And whenever there is suffering in your life, it's because of a lack of virtue and a stronger vice that's keeping you stuck. So if you're suffering, it's because there's lack of virtue in your life. It could be lack of virtue in your finances. It could be lack of virtue in your dealings with people. It could be lack of virtue in your self-study or study of a subject matter. It could be any number of things. But if your life is not going as you desire it to go, it's because of lack of virtue. And so the question is, should you be working on the virtues before you do Arhatic prep? Well, it's a good question because Arhatic prep is preparatory for our Hatha Yoga practices or our Hatha Yoga meditations. So what's the preparatory part? Purification, purification, purification. So when you practice character building in your life, you're purifying yourself. When you practice our Hatha Yoga preparatory level, you're also practicing purification. So your karma is partially being accelerated. And then at the higher levels of our Hatha Yoga, it really, really, really gets accelerated. So the disciple falls off the course, falls off the wagon, as it were, because of impurities or lack of purification, lack of character development. So, for instance, let's say you haven't worked on your anger. You haven't done any awareness, any understanding, any purification of the anger within you. You don't practice forgiveness. You hold on to grudges, and you just kind of go about your day, your week, your month, your year, being angry. Then you get into something like our Hatha Yoga preparatory level, and you start doing the practices, and then all of a sudden things start speeding up in your life. So you start having an awareness of, wow, I didn't realize I had all this anger built up inside of me. And then it starts to get out of hand. And then it starts to dominate not only your practice, but it starts bleeding into your day to day life. And then you start exploding at people. And you're like, where's all this anger coming from? It's not that the anger was coming from anywhere from your practice, it's revealing and energizing the anger that has been there for a very, very long time, years, possibly decades, even previous incarnations. And that's just with anger. We don't just have anger in our systems, we also have greed, we also have excessive sexual desire, we also have negative pride and self delusion and self conceitedness, we also have um, the tendency to steal, stealing sexual energy, stealing material possessions, stealing um, intellectual credit for other people's work, right? So all of these little or big vices become accelerated and magnified as we do our practices. So our Hatha Yoga can help you purify those weaknesses out of your system faster, but that's if you're doing the practices properly. So, what do I mean by that? People have this assumption on the spiritual path that spirituality is just about meditation, 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 which in our Hatha Yoga you're taught many meditations. So they go, okay, well, I'm just going to do my meditations, and that will make me a better person. But people forget to do the purification practices because sometimes the purification practices are boring. Sometimes the purification practices are very difficult. They take up a lot of perceived time. So they're like, I'd rather just do the meditation, have all this power, have all this energy, and then I'll worry about purification later. But what happens is they start energizing the seeds within them. They energize this anger, they energize the greed, they energize the excessive sexual desire that were teeny tiny before. Now they're amplified and magnified because of the excess energy, right? Because spiritual energy is like a fertilizer. So whatever is in your garden, for better or for worse, is going to become amplified as you continue doing your spiritual practices. That's why many people fall off the spiritual path once they get to a certain level, right? Because the impurities within them become so over magnified that the disciple can't do their practices anymore because there's so much chaos around them. So they fall off the path. And this falling off the path can last not just for a few years, but actually can last for many, many incarnations. So purification is very, very important. So the question is, should you have a strong foundation of character building before you do our Hatha Yoga prep? I would say do I would say apply, because with most of the higher classes in Pranic Healing or Hatha Yoga, you have to apply, and then you're approved or not approved, right? The masters will scan you, they'll see where your life is, and they'll approve you or they won't approve you. And if they approve you, then that means at your current state, if you follow the simple instructions within Pranic Healing or Hatha Yoga, you do your practices, and that is purifying you, and that is developing your character. Now, if you start going, you know what, I'm going to leave this out, I'm going to leave this out, I'm going to do 2 to 3 times more of this than what's recommended, then you start going into, you're no longer practicing our Hatha Yoga, you're practicing some diluted version, some distorted version of our Hatha Yoga, and that's when people get into trouble. But if you follow the simple protocol, and when things inevitably come up in your life, then you can go back to, okay, when I'm having financial difficulties, what do I do? When I'm having relationship difficulties, what do I do? When I'm having um, excessive psychic things awakening within me, what do I do? And then you follow the recommendations. So if you follow the simple instructions, you can do our Hatha Yoga prep as soon as you've been approved. Now, if you have not been approved to do our Hatha Yoga prep by one of the masters or the people teaching the class, then that is an indicator of, okay, I need to work on something. What do I need to work on? Do I need to get my financial life in order? Do I need to get my emotional life in order? Do I need to remove some distractions from my life? Do I need to remove unhealthy relationships, or do I need to mend family relationships in order to qualify for a Hatha Yoga? What do I need to do? Do I need to practice Twin Hearts every single day consistently for a month, for 3 months, for 6 months to purify myself enough to qualify? Because basically, anywhere in the world, our Hatha Yoga is offered at least once a year. So if you get denied, then that gives you the indicator to purify, purify, purify for a year and then reapply. I don't know too many people that don't get approved for a Hatha Yoga prep, but I know many, many people um, who have been denied taking the higher levels of Hatha Yoga, myself included, years ago. So I hope that answers that question. But the better your character is, the smoother your spiritual life will be. Actually, all areas of your life. Next question. Grandmaster Chogo Koksui wrote a book that serves as a reference manual and the basis for each pranic healing class. What are the books that serve as a reference and basis for Arhatic prep work and further Arhatic levels? So, Grandmaster Chogo Koksui wrote over 20 books about pranic healing and Arhatic yoga and the other classes. And there is no specific book for Arhatic yoga. So for pranic healing, the book we always recommend is Miracles Through Pranic Healing, which used to be titled The Art and Science of Pranic Healing. And within that book gives you the foundational understanding of pranic healing. And then at the end of the book, it gives you many different protocols, beginner protocols that you can use to alleviate people of lower back pain, headaches, toothaches, things like that. Now, the question is, are there any books or manuals for Arhatic Yoga? So the only book that really goes into detail with Arhatic Yoga that's available to the public is The Origins of Modern Pranic Healing and Arhatic Yoga by Grandmaster Chogo Koksui. And in that book, he gives you the details as to how he developed the different classes within Pranic Healing and Arhatic Yoga and their purposes. I highly recommend that book. One of the greatest books I've ever read. I'm still dissecting all the lessons contained within it. And then when you take Arhatic Yoga Prep, they give you a manual. So the manual is the reminder of like, okay, what am I supposed to do on Mondays for my practices? What am I supposed to do on Tuesdays for my practices? When I'm having money problems, what do I do? When I'm having emotional problems, what do I do? What's that purification technique? The blue triangle thing, how does that work? So that manual gives you the outline of what your weekly, monthly, and yearly practices are, and also book recommendations as well. So there is no specific book that goes into great detail about Arhatic Yoga because Pranic Healing is a mystery school, right? So a mystery school has outer teachings, inner teachings, and inner teachings, right? So at the higher levels of Arhatic Yoga, you have to start writing your notes in code. And then at the next level of Arhatic Yoga, there's no note taking allowed at all. So it's simply oral transmission. So you have to remember the technique and then you practice. So Arhatic Yoga Prep, you get a manual. The higher levels of Arhatic, you start having to write your notes in code. And then the even higher levels is oral transmission only. So you have to be still, be aware, pay attention, and remember the technique. And I'm sure at the even higher levels of Arhatic Yoga, there is not even oral transmission. Good questions. Next one. I struggle a lot with constancy of aim and effort, and I feel I really need to work on very basic things related to that virtue. Any tips, tools, resources, practices that would help? Great question. So again, we talked about the five major virtues within Pranic Healing or Hatha Yoga. The one virtue is called constancy of aim and effort and non-laziness. Again, constancy is connected to the solar plexus, moving through resistance, right? Solar plexus. So when people quit, when they give up, when they throw in the towel, throw up their hands, that's lack of constancy. That's lack of solar plexus energy. In order to have constancy, you have to have courage. In order to have constancy, you have to have courage, which is connected to the solar plexus, which is connected to daringness. So when someone is daringness, they're mastering constancy of aim and effort and non-laziness. They're mastering their solar plexus. They're practicing what is known as self-mastery from the solar plexus down. So one of the best ways to master constancy of aim and effort and non-laziness is one, have a schedule, and two, do something with the physical body. So when people have a gym schedule of they work out Monday, Wednesday, Friday at a certain time, they're mastering constancy of aim and effort and non-laziness. Or they're working out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, they're mastering constancy of aim and effort and non-laziness. Think about most jobs. They have you work what? 5 days on, 2 days off. 5 days on, 2 days off. You work from this time to this time, and you do these activities from this time to this time. So jobs help people develop constancy of aim, effort, and non-laziness. And it's connected to the basic chakra, survival, right? So constancy is the solar plexus, aim is the ajna, and then effort is the basic chakra. So if you have no aim, it doesn't engage the basic, right? So if you had a job, but you didn't have a certain time of waking up, you didn't have a specific place to go, and you didn't have a specific thing to do, meaning you have no aim, your basic chakra would not be engaged. But the fact that you have to wake up at this time, drive to this location, and do these things, aim, 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 it engages your basic chakra to take action. Also, deadline helps with constancy of aim and effort and non-laziness. Deadline is connected to your solar plexus, right? Emotional commitment. So meet me here at 8 o'clock and we're going to start at 8 o'clock and do this, this, and this. So my recommendation is having a regular schedule of doing something physical, preferably 5 days a week or more, right? So we brush our teeth in the morning, we brush our teeth in the evening. That's a physical thing. So we've developed constancy of aim and effort and non-laziness when it comes to brushing our teeth. So again, it's connected to the physical body. So one of the best ways of developing the virtue of constancy of aim and effort and non-laziness is through the physical body. You can also develop it through the mental body and through your emotional body. It's more difficult. So if you're working on developing that virtue, do it through the physical body. So what physical thing am I going to do that's requiring me to practice constancy of aim and effort and non-laziness? Because people should work out every single day, but we don't work out every single day. Why? Because we lack constancy of aim and effort and non-laziness, because we do something based on feeling versus doing something based on a schedule or based on what's the right thing to do. So if you're scheduled to work out Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 8 o'clock a.m. to 8:30 a.m. or 8 a.m. to 9 a.m., you do it whether you feel like it or not. That's how you develop the virtue. But if you do it based on, well, I feel like doing it or I don't feel like doing it, you're not developing the virtue of constancy of aim and effort and non-laziness. That makes sense? So when I was doing live streams, I made a commitment that I'm going to do them every single day, rain, sleet, or shine, at this time. And I carried that out for maybe 10 months, roughly. So every single day for 10 months at a certain time, I would do that. I would get on, I would do a live stream anywhere from 15 to 45 minutes about a spiritual topic. So I was developing my constancy of aim and effort and non-laziness, right? Generating good karma, doing service, developing my ninja power, my ninja ability, right? And it was not easy to do. But after 10 months, I got very good at constancy of aim, effort, and non laziness of making my physical body do something, even if it didn't feel like it. And working out also helped develop that. And I remember one of the best compliments I've received in a very long time was from one of the Pranic Healing masters. Yay, somebody's developing or somebody's mastering constancy of aim, effort, and non laziness. Because she was noticing, you're always on, you're always on, you're always on, you're always on, you're always on. So that's how you develop that. And start small, right? So if you don't have a workout schedule now, don't say, okay, I'm going to commit 7 days a week, 2 hours every single day, or your meditation practice. I'm going to do 2 hours of meditation 7 days a week. No, do something 5 days a week, 15 to 30 minutes per day. And then that's developing your muscle, developing your muscle, developing your muscle. Okay? Next question. I would love a series of video lectures from you on the 7 rays in general, as well as how they relate and can be used to practice and strengthen the virtues. That's a pretty tall order. Do you think you can make this happen sooner rather than later? I have not thought about doing something like that. That would take definitely sitting down and plotting that out. So again, the 7 rays are connected to the 7 rays of creation, which are the energies that go through the divine spark, through the higher soul, the incarnated soul, and the different bodies. So it depends on what level of truth you're looking at. And also, the purpose of the Inner Transformation membership is to have practical spirituality, right? So we could talk about how the 7 rays relate to the higher soul, to the divine spark, how they relate to the higher soul, but where's the practicality in that? Versus how does your mental body, which ray is connected to your mental body? How do you process information in thinking? How do you process information emotionally? How do you process information physically? So if you know what your rays are on the mental, emotional, and physical levels, it gives you a practical understanding of your strengths and how to lean into your strengths, and also how to be aware of your weaknesses and how to maybe not lean away from your weaknesses, but there is an important point. One of the senior pranic healing practitioners said to me, it's better to lean into your strengths than to keep working on your weaknesses. And Master Choa did cover this as well, that there's a tendency for spiritual practitioners to constantly work on their weaknesses, work on their weaknesses, work on their weaknesses, which drops their self-esteem and their self-worth, because they're always like, I'm such a horrible person, I have to work on more of my anger, more of my fear, more of my greed, more of my excessive desires, more of this, more of that. And so they spend all this time removing, but they spent very little time building good self-esteem, good self-worth, and the virtues. So we always want to make sure that what we teach in the Inner Transformation membership is for practical purposes, right? So how do we practice and strengthen the virtues? We practice and strengthen the virtues by embodying them, right? Easier said than done, but you go, okay, well, the virtue of loving kindness, non-injury towards oneself and others, and thoughts, words, and actions. How does that materialize? Where am I currently, right? So you have to look at your life. Where am I currently with loving kindness and non-injury in thoughts towards myself? Just that. And you could think, okay, well, how do I think about myself throughout the day? How do I think about myself when it comes to my health, when it comes to my relationships, when it comes to my career? How do I think about myself? What do I say to myself throughout the day? Are the thoughts loving and kind, or are the thoughts cruel, destructive, um, hurtful towards myself? So just that, you can see that you can spend weeks, months, even years working on that one line of how are my thoughts towards myself? Not how are my thoughts, how's my speech, and how's my action towards myself and then towards others. That's why the virtues take lifetimes to master. Um, but that's a good request. Next question. Can you elaborate about the pros and cons of astral projection? Okay, good question. So, what's astral projection? You have your emotional body, which is also known as the astral body. It's where you have your feelings. So, every time we go to bed at night, we shift most of our consciousness from the physical body, put it into the emotional body, and then we travel around in the astral world, either doing service, learning, or if we're very developed, teaching. That's pretty much what's happening. Now, have you noticed that when you wake up suddenly from a dream or from a nightmare, you're feeling it? Meaning you feel like you're falling and you wake up. You feel like you're drowning and you wake up. You feel like somebody's chasing you with a knife or a gun and you wake up. Or you feel a lot of happiness and joy, right? So you're feeling, your emotional astral body is vibrating on that plane, and then you come back into your physical body, your physical consciousness. You wake up. Either you wake up in the middle of the night or you wake up after 8, 9 hours of deep sleep and you're rested. So we pick up astral debris as we interact on the astral plane. I'm not a huge fan of astral projection because it's a slower and lower way of traveling in the inner world. I prefer mental projection and higher mental projection than astral projection because we already have enough heavy things in our emotional bodies that we're working out. True or not true, right? We have fear and anger and stress and worry and low self-esteem and low self-worth, all these different things. So why compound that by consciously going into our astral bodies and then going around and picking up things in the astral world? So you have to ask yourself the question, what's the purpose of it? So the pros and cons of traveling in your astral body. Well, what's the purpose? And Master Choa gives specific techniques to shake your consciousness from your physical body into your astral body and then to travel around. But you have to ask yourself, well, what's the purpose? Is the purpose to heal? Is the purpose to serve? Is the purpose to learn? Is the purpose to teach? What's the purpose of me astrally projecting, taking a large portion of my consciousness, putting it into my astral body and traveling around? What's the purpose of it? Right? And again, there's a lot of not so pleasant things in the astral plane because whatever is inside of your astral body, you will attract like energies. So if you have a super clean, vibrant, happy astral body, then those are the kinds of energies that you will attract as well. But if you have a lot of holes in your astral body, if you have a lot of fear, a lot of worry, a lot of need to be stimulated in your astral body, then when you travel in the astral world, you'll attract those kinds of energies, which can lead to having an emotionally chaotic life outside of that practice. So I'm not a big fan of astral projection, and almost every person I've met on the path who talks about they specialize in astral projection or they focus on astral projection tend to live very chaotic lives. That's just been my personal experience. So I'm not a big fan of it. I wouldn't consider myself an expert in traveling astrally. It's not what my focus is. So that's the best I got for you. Next question. Is there spiritual significance to Marvel heroic movies? Do you think directors of these movies are guided to release for the masses? That's a good question. I don't think it's the directors. I think it's more of the writers. So the question is, these Marvel movies, these comic book movies, these DC movies of superheroes doing superhuman things, is that are is that information meant for the masses? It's primarily the writers and producers of this information that they are activating their forehead chakra, which allows them to go to a certain plane in the inner world and extract certain truths that they then write down, and then they give that over to the director, the actors, and then everyone's engaged with that. But this information has a tendency, because it contains truth, it has a tendency to pull in the masses because people recognize and resonate with truth, right? If you talk about compassion, not too many people on the planet will argue that compassion is a good is is a bad thing, right? Most everyone will talk about cruelty, meanness is not a good thing, and compassion is a good thing, right? Because we're in alignment with the virtues, we're in alignment with the qualities of the higher soul. So movies like Thor contain spiritual teachings that are veiled through the characters. Harry Potter, which Master Toa talked a lot about, was picked out by the author, J.K. Rowling. Her forehead chakra was overactivated and was able to extract spiritual truths and then put them in the characters and write about them, right? Same thing with Lord of the Rings. Same thing with The Matrix. Same thing with other Marvel and DC comic movies. There's levels of truth that are being portrayed. Like, for instance, in Thor Ragnarok, you had the Rainbow Bridge of Light, right? That they would travel in between worlds, which is connected to what? The spiritual corridor Antakarana. It allows us to travel our consciousness to travel to different worlds, different planes. So one of my mentors many, many years ago was, I don't want to say obsessed, I don't think that would be the right word, highly interested maybe, in this teenage author who had a blog who was writing about a fantasy world. She's maybe 15 or 16 years old. I think she was in the UK, if I'm not mistaken. And she was just writing about this mythical world with these mythical creatures and very, very, very complex storyline. And my mentor was observing that this particular girl had a super activated forehead chakra, and she was literally being communicated with through this plane. Like, she was able to tap into a specific plane that contained certain deities that were giving her information. So he would every either every day she would be adding more storyline, and he would be logging on and reading it, and then I think he was actually at certain points contributing to it or writing her about, like asking questions. But this particular teenager was accessing the inner world and being communicated through. So we just think that uh, these characters are in someone's imagination, but in reality, the forehead chakra is extracting wisdom from another plane and is being communicated through the story, like Harry Potter. So it's really quite fascinating. Um, so I don't necessarily think the directors are sitting down and going, "How can we release high level spiritual teachings to the masses?" I think it's simply the producers and the writers are accessing the inner world, extracting the information, and then it's told in an exciting way that what engages us is the truth being exposed, um, and what keeps people coming back is the excitement, right? So it's telling a high level spiritual truth in an entertaining way. So it's handling the masses and then the intelligentsia. Does it make sense? Um, and pretty much, at least for the last decade, whenever there's been a comic book movie being released, a Marvel movie, a DC movie, Master Co would always take a group of people after class, like a Sunday night, typically Sunday nights, and go, and then there would be a little talk about, oh, see that spiritual technique, oh, see that spiritual truth, see that, right? Little things that are kind of like littered throughout the 2 hour movie. Um, Next question. What is the Shri Yantra? Good question. So the Shri Yantra is connected to the goddess Lakshmi, and this yantra is a sacred geometry. It's a pattern of triangles stacked on top of triangles that radiates prosperity energy, and yantras are portals to go through. So there's obviously so much I can say, but they're portals. So you have different yantras for different things. So yantra yoga is using sacred geometry to enter certain planes for certain purposes. So there was a pranic healer who was in New York City for many, many years, and he was into jewelry, and he made a transition from just ordinary jewelry into making sacred geometry, really, really beautiful pieces of silver and gold and certain crystals, and integrating sacred geometry, including yantras, into his work. And it was scanned by one of the masters, consecrated, and blessed by one of the masters. And to my knowledge, he's still doing this business currently. He moves from country to country, but I think he's back in New York City, if I'm not mistaken. And um, so people that can see the inner world, again, can extract those designs, those mathematical formulas, those yantras, and then depict them. And so just by looking at a yantra, it does something to your energy body. And with proper training and proper understanding, you can go through a yantra and access different planes. And again, a yantra is not just to be looked at from a two-dimensional or three-dimensional perspective, but many dimensions. Does that make sense? Um, it helps to clairvoyantly look at these things to have a better understanding, right? It's like Grandmaster Chogo Koksui talks about the difference between um, an ordinary person and a high level clairvoyant is like the difference between a blind person and a person who can see, right? Because a high level clairvoyant can look at something very quickly and have understanding that would take an ordinary person a very, very long time of dissecting, examining, studying in order to understand. That's why clairvoyance is called to see clearly, right? So a Sri Yantra is for prosperity that you would put on the north facing wall in your house. And by looking at it, it stimulates your basic chakra. Where are some of the most powerful places in the world energetically? It's a good question. So there are grid lines. You can go to different websites and look at the grid lines of where the most quote unquote spiritual energy is throughout the planet. So as I understand it, for instance, you have You have Mount Kailash, which is considered the spiritual core of the planet, which many great spiritual teachers have lived there, died there, taught there. Um, but these these spots are all over the world. So each country has their own chakra system, like mini chakras, and then you have major chakras or major energy centers around the world. So as I understand it, for instance, like Brazil, if I'm not mistaken, is the sex chakra of the planet, right? Um, where I am right now in Hawaii, there are certain grid lines that go throughout the Hawaiian Islands that when you go there, you have access to high level energies. I don't have that grid line in front of me. I haven't memorized it. So you can go online and there's different grid lines for different purposes. But it's been very, very long time since I've seen it. Sedona has a grid line, as I understand it, um, which is interesting because before I came to Hawaii, my friend who lives in the Sedona area had done his research for years. He was telling me that Hawaii has several grid lines that go through it, which, the energy out here is amazing. Meditations are very deep. The energy is very, very clean. It's constantly circulating and purifying itself through the water, through the air, through the land itself. So it would make sense. Um, but the most powerful places, if you said what are the top 10 most powerful places in the world energetically, I wouldn't be able to answer that clearly. Also, there's different energies for different things. So, for instance, like New York City highly stimulates your basic and solar plexus chakra, partly because it's on Indian burial grounds that the Indians prior probably knew that it had lots of materialization energies. But would it be the best place to have high level spiritual experiences? Probably not. So it depends on most strongest energetic places. Some could be strong for prosperity, materialization. Some could be strong for leaving your physical body and having very expansive spiritual experiences. So it depends what you're looking for. Joshua Tree in California, there's lots and lots of vitality energies there. So healing the physical body is a great place. But for, I don't know, um, actually, it's good. It's good for spiritual purposes as well. Hmm. Yeah. So maybe at some point we can make that list or find that list if there's one that already exists. And then last question. Is sacred geometry really powerful energetically speaking? Yes. If so, what are some powerful sacred designs? Well, we just talked about one of them, the Sri Yantra. The Tree of Life would be another one. The Flower of Life would be another one. Um, if you just go to Google Images and type in sacred geometry, probably the ones you'll see most common will be the Sri Yantra, but there'll be other designs as well that have different purposes. But again, they're portals. They're portals to lands. Portals to energies. They're portal to teachers. So it depends. Um, but they're extremely powerful. They're like um, they're like passcodes to access energy. So, like a mantra is a passcode, right? There are certain mantras in different schools that give you access to certain energies. So, for instance, Om Namah Shivaya gives you the passcode to access will or destructive power, right? Um, Om Mahalakshmi mantra, access prosperity or materialization energies, right? And the more reverent you are, the greater your understanding of the mantra, and the more you've developed your throat, your ability to access those energies is accelerated and magnified. because a big part of it, not just the throat, but a big part of it is the size of your spiritual cord, right? So sometimes people have the expectation that when someone's chanting and it doesn't sound very fluffy and acoustically pleasing, they think it doesn't have any power. And a person that has, very flowery, very tonally perfect chanting, that's better. Not necessarily. It's dependent upon the size of the person's antakarana. So if you have a big spiritual cord, but you're not chanting beautifully, there's still a lot of power. Does that make sense? And then the throat is kind of the ability to materialize what you're chanting. The questions were really good this week. Um, Very detailed. I do actually would like to see those grid lines again. I saw them many years ago. And again, there's different grid lines. So there's not a different grid lines for different purposes. But great questions. We'll get some more questions in the next couple days, and then we'll, have more for you guys. But again, submit your questions to christianrlong@gmail. So email me, christianrlong@gmail, or you can message me at Facebook at Christian R. Long. I'm pretty sure, right? Christian R. Long at Facebook. And that way I can just copy and paste them, put them in, and then have them ready for you guys. But very good questions. I hope I answered them sufficiently, maybe not totally, but sufficiently to nudge you a little bit further in your development and also to inspire you to practice more understanding. I remember when maybe the first 10 years in Pranic Healing or Hatha Yoga, I would constantly be raising my hand, to get my questions answered. And then at some point, the masters, almost like they had sat down and had a conversation separately of me, of like, all right, we're not going to answer his questions anymore. He has to start figuring some things out for himself, which obviously is not the purpose of the Inner Transformation membership, because you guys are, encouraged to ask questions. But I remember one of the masters says, we know what you've been studying and what you've been experiencing by the types of questions you ask, right? Because if somebody asks a question, it gives you an understanding of what they've read or haven't read, what they've experienced or haven't experienced, what they understand or don't understand, right? So I think they just were like, okay, he's ready to start going within to explore, to have a better understanding of why he's asking what he's asking versus I have an impulse to ask a question. I haven't done any thinking, any discernment whatsoever. I just have an impulse. I have a question. I have an impulse. I have a question. And then my questions stopped getting answered probably about nine years ago ish, 8 or 9 years ago. And it was a great thing for me because it forced me to clarify, why do I want to know the answer to that? Just like the question about pros and cons of astral projection. Why is that important? Right? What is astral projection? What's the purpose of astral projection? Why do I want to know more about it? Is it for pride? Is it for ego? Is it to feel good? Is it because it sounds like it's something I should be interested in or not? Right? So it was always great in class when a senior practitioner would ask an apparently mundane question, and Grandmaster Cho's eyes would get all bright, and he would have this big smile on his face, and he'd be excited because he knew that disciple just opened a portal for great teachings to come through, right? Because the teacher teaches at the level of the student. So the more advanced the student, the better the questions the student asks, the higher, deeper teachings can come through. That's why understanding is so important. So I hope that helps. Hope you guys got value from it. We'll be doing another broadcasting soon to catch up with these previous weeks of not having the information out. Again, my apologies. I wasn't expecting to get COVID ever in a year and a half of traveling around and doing all the things that I did and interacting with all the people I interacted with. My body got COVID around a COVID mandate protest in Hawaii, of all places. Very strange. So we're recovering from that on many, many different levels. But we will catch up with all the recordings that we have. We're not too far off. Another few days and we'll be caught up entirely. So let's close. And I look forward to connecting with you guys soon with more Q&As and more lectures. Place your hands on your heart. Be aware of your heart. Be aware of your crown. Be aware of them together. To the Supreme God, Divine Father, Divine Mother, respected and beloved teacher, Grandmaster Cho Kuksui, to his teacher, Lord Bodhisattva Meiling, to Lord Buddha Kuan Yin, to Lord Ganesh, to Holy Master Count Saint Germain, to all the holy gurus, holy masters, saints, archangels, holy angels, healing ministers, to our divine selves, our higher souls, we thank you all for your great, great blessings. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for your discernment. Thank you for your understanding to become a better person, a better soul. We thank you, Lord God. We thank you all. With gratitude, respect, and love. So be it, and so it is. Thank you. All right, guys, lots of love to each and every one of you. A lot of energy in and out. And we'll see you guys soon. This is Christian Long, Life Enhancement Consultant, wishing you a beautiful day, a beautiful week, and a beautiful life. Atma, Namaste. Bye-bye.